KDKA Afternoon News. How you doing? I'm Bill Rehkopf, and boy, we've got a studio full of folks here that I want to introduce to you. Good day here in the building when you can have the councilman, Reverend Ricky Burgess here. You also have Jasiri X, community leader and activist. Paradise Gray is here, and even your grandson Maurice is here from Woodland Hills. Gentlemen, want to welcome you all to the program here today. I wanted to have a discussion this hour, and not so much. I didn't want to get into the debate of whether Zimmerman was guilty or not. The court has made its decision, and the jury has reached the verdict, and it is what it is, at least for the time being. Whether or not there are going to be federal charges, that's another thing down the line. What I was most interested in discussing with this group that I have is how do we power forward? What are we going to do from here? How do we move? How do we try to bridge gaps that we know exist? And how do we try to make it better? Jasiri, I want to start with you. The verdict came down late Saturday night. Was there a lot of visible reaction from your friends, people you talked to, people on the street? And if so, how are they handling it?
Oh, absolutely. Well, as fate would have it, I was actually at a conference in Chicago, Illinois, with 100 of the leading young black activists for all across the country. So we were all together actually in a room when the verdict came down. Of course, when it came down not guilty, I mean, the first, it was a lot of tears. A lot of hurt people and heartbroken people, especially younger people who haven't really experienced the continual injustice that we faced and seen as black people here in America. And so a lot of people had hope in the system, and so you could literally see the heartbreak. But then after we wiped away the tears, we had a part of a group actually went into downtown Chicago to help organize a peaceful protest. People just want to express themselves, and then another group began to work on next steps. We're here, we're at this conference, we're in this room. Now, how can we use this moment to begin to have more power and really to put ourselves in a position where this doesn't happen ever again?
You talked about the fact that there are a lot of younger people, and this was their first opportunity. Paradise, you've been around the block, I don't know, for a long time now. So your reaction? I mean, he talks about getting it for the first time, but you've seen a lot of it.
Yes, I have. Especially growing up in New York. Eleanor Bumpers, Yusef Hawkins.
Yeah.
We had a lot of incidents. Amadou Diallo. New York has been a hotbed of these incidents. Yes.
Reverend Burgess, you have made a lot of headlines here just recently for, trying to bring groups together and trying to bring communities together. What did you hear from some of those people here in the last couple of days?
Well, certainly this verdict exemplifies the disconnect between two different communities. Unfortunately, there's low and moderate income communities, typically brown and black, and then the majority community. And there's a inherent disconnect. I think you've seen in the reaction from the verdict, where you have low, moderate income people, African Americans being outraged, where others not so much. And we need to understand that there is a difference in perception. There's a perception that among African Americans, particularly low, moderate people generally, that the system is not for them and is designed to cause them harm. And we have to do something to dispel that myth. And to make sure it is a myth, change laws if necessary, so that we're all living and playing on the same playing field.
I want to illustrate this disconnect that Reverend Burgess was talking about by going to Dollar Bank Instant Access here. And this message is from Camille. This sort of injustice keeps happening, and that is what people are tired of. Johnny Gamage, Rodney King, Jordan Miles, Amadou Diallo, just a handful of innocent young African-American men murdered. They are always are not convicted. When will justice be served? And then Tom says, ask your panel and other guests if they remember the protests and the riots when O.J. was acquitted. I don't. Reverend Burgess, there's your disconnect.
Yeah, and I think we have to make sure that the laws are just for everyone. Unfortunately, in this rally of handguns and the stand your ground laws in Florida, what we see really is almost a legitimization of shooting people. It's with very little reason you can, in some states, use handguns, use guns in fatal force. when I don't think it's really justified. And so we have to make sure the laws are fair and just to protect both everyone. And then I think we have to change the culture. We have a culture of, I believe, of disrespect and unconcern. And we need to figure out a way that everybody, regardless of their skin color, their ethnicity, or their economic situation, receives dignity and respect from law enforcement and from the laws of the land.
And that disrespect and unconcern, it does go both ways, Jasiri. I mean, how do you fight that?
Well, I think I was interesting that, the first person really listed off, 4 or 5 names. I mean, in 2012, 313 black people were killed by the police, security guards, and people like George Zimmerman. It's 2012, one every 28 hours. But the second person had to go all the way. When was OJ? 20 years ago? Yeah. You have to go all the way back 20 years. And I remember, from footage I saw, there were white people that were very angry. They're still angry that OJ got off. And so, to make it seem like, that we're in some type of, contest, injustice contest. That's not what this is about. You know what I'm saying? We want truth and justice for everybody displayed equally.
I'm joined in the studio by Pittsburgh City Councilman, the Reverend Ricky Burgess, also Jasiri X, Paradise Gray, local community activist here. And Jasiri, I want to start with you as we get back into this segment. We talk about bridging the gap and trying to move forward from this, and I'm struck by your cap. It says us versus them. As you define it right now in the context of this discussion, who is them?
Well, I would say them is ignorance, is racism, is injustice, and us is humanity. I mean, to me, it's our fight collectively against, issues that continually divide us. And, like Chris Moore said, when we after these 100 young black leaders got over this initial shock of what happened, we realized that our struggle and our next move has to be something that brings unity, not just to us personally, but to all oppressed people all over the world. And we put out a joint statement when you can see it online, 100 of us, and we feel like this is a moment that good can come out of it. We feel like Trayvon's life was not in vain. And he really exposed something in the system. So now, if you're a doctor and you see that a patient is very sick, well, then the next step is to offer some type of medication that could heal this person. And so one of the last things I want to say is that, if you watch the protests, they universally were not only peaceful, but multiracial. And so you had all communities, all people really fighting back and pushing back against injustice, against racism, and against these things that continually divide us.
Paradise Gray is here with us and talking about, and again, from the perspective, you got Jasiri, who's got, the young person's point of view, having kind of experienced this the first time. And again, you've been around the block with so many of these things. How do you start taking a step forward after this? Is it like taking a step forward after all the others, or is there reason to believe you're further down the path now?
Well, my elder in New York, Sonny Carson, he used to always say, never let a good tragedy go to waste. And, Emmett Till, his blood wasn't in vain, and it's up to us to make sure that Trayvon Martin's blood is not in vain. And, we have to stop looking at these things as individual problems with racism and white supremacy. You have to look at the systemic problems. And it wasn't just the George Zimmerman versus Trayvon Martin part that makes this such a travesty. But if you look at the complicity of the Sanford Police Department and the shoddy police work that they did from the beginning, it's the role that the system played in this thing that really has it the way that it is right now. So we have to look at fixing the system. Because the system, it's not broke. It worked like it's supposed to. And we have to change how it's supposed to work if we're going to make a difference.
With Paradise Gray here, you've got your grandson, Marie, sitting here. He's about to go into 7th grade over at Woodland Hills. Now, what's your vision, and realistically speaking, not what we'd want to happen, but realistically speaking, what's your vision for the world when he's in our age and he's sitting in your chair?
When Maurice is sitting in his chair, he's going to make a difference in this world. He wants to be an engineer. He wants to work in computers. He's a very intelligent young man, and I'm going to make sure he gets those opportunities to pursue that education. I would like to see us work as the Jericho generation to fulfill Martin Luther King's dream here in America, because his dream wasn't just electing Obama. You know, it was much more deeper than that. You know, when we can all look at each other as one race, the human race, and understand that we're all connected, and prejudice and violence toward anyone for any reason that's superficial can't be tolerated by anybody. You know, we should not even have a term called black on black crime. You know, that term in itself is a media term that's almost meaningless. Crime is crime, and criminals are criminals. We need to rid our communities of crime all the way around. We need to do a lot better job and understand each other better, and not make the world a worse place for each other.
Jasiri, how do we get through that message? How do you get it? How do you keep moving?
Well, I think it's difficult because I think, unfortunately, a lot of times, I mean, I want to commend you, because I think, you know, a lot of media really thrive on kind of putting a panel together that would kind of go at one another and kind of, you know, say statements that will incite people, you know, because that's a lot of times what get ratings today. And I also think we also got to deal with, and Chris mentioned it, was poverty. The growing inequality and inequity of people's, you know, salaries, people's economic situations, is what oftentimes leads to a lot of the crime and the situation people find themselves in. And so I really think that we need, you know, we need a real democracy, not a democracy where politicians that can be bought and paid for by corporations, and media outlets are treated the same, but a real place where people. So that's how we get the message out. And I think, you know, the internet and social media is allowing people to get a message out, allowing people to unify and connect in a way that we've never seen before. And I just hope it continues. And I hope, you know, that people realize what's going on and see that we have the power, but our real power is in our unity.